Okay, good morning and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, just Daf It. Today we're doing Maseches Nazir Daf Lamed Beis, number 32. We have a great share for you today. Almost finishing the first volume of Nazir and Art Scroll. And tomorrow I was informed that Lamed Gimel, there's no actually Lamed Gimel on Beis. It's only Lamed Gimel on Aleph, and it's a short one. So I guess I get a break on Motzei Shabbos. But we still have to come up with an Ian share. That's the difficult part. There's no Gemara, but I have to come up with an Ian share on basically 6 lines of Gemara. We'll see if we can do it. Am I up to the challenge? Of course I'm up to the challenge. Come on. You know me. All right, let's start from the bottom. The Mishnah, Lamed Aleph and Mabey is on the bottom. About 10 lines from the bottom. The Mishnah says, Mishnah Nazir and Nazir and Nishal Chacham, the Asro. He took a Nazir as one himself. Apparently, according to some Rishonim, he violated his Naziris. And that's why he went to a Chacham. The Chacham was, right? He took a Naziris and he kept on drinking wine. He kept on being Metam Mesim. And he wanted to go Matir as Naziris. The Asro, the Chacham said, no way, I'm not going to be Matir Naziris. You blatantly violated your Naziris. Mona Mishash Nadar, right? There's no recourse for him, right? He violated his Naziris. So, if he was Metam Mesim, he has to start counting again. If he merely drank wine, so then he continues from the time that he took the Naziris and finishes it. But there's no penalty, it doesn't seem, for the Mishnah. We'll talk about this in the Gemara, where there seems to be a penalty by Tanoim imposed on him. Let's say he took a Naziris, and he regretted taking a Naziris, and went to a Chacham. Said, if I would have known such and such, I would never have taken a Naziris ve'etiro. And the Chacham matter him. I told Behemdam Rashas, even though he separated an animal, he designated, this will be my chatas or my ola or shlamim at the end of my Naziros. Take the Eder. Again, once the Naziris is batal, it's gone. So any hektish she made on account of the Naziris, again, is also nullified. The animal can go graze in the flock. It's not hektish anymore. Amar Beis Hillel Beis Shammai, it says Beis Shammai, you see, we had a machlokas in the previous Mishnah about making something hektish by mistake. It was a different case in the previous Mishnah. They said, we explained why Beis Shammai subscribed to the view the hektish shells will be hektish, but one of the proofs that the Gemara recorded is this Mishnah. Beis Hillel says to Beis Shammai, right, if you're shol on a Nazirus, right, you undo a Nazirus, the hektish that you made is considered hektish ratos. So here also hektish ratos. So Amar Len Beis Shammai. Beis Shammai had a different answer in the Gemara, but to give a different answer over here. Amar Len Beis Shammai. Igata modim misha tav akarl chi asiri l'sir chi la'achad asar asiri shu mokdash makudash. Beis Shammai said to them, there's a different proof that maybe there could be a concept that hektish ratos would be hektish. For example, Meiser Behema. Meiser Behema is a unique halacha that the 10th animal that you separate from your flock is considered hektish, Meiser Behema, of the new animals that were born in your flock that year. The way you calculate this, you have all your animals line up in the pen, and they exit one by one, and you're supposed to put a red dot on the color of the red dot, the 10th one that comes out. So what happens, Carla Chias here, the 9th one, you made a mistake. You don't know how to count. You didn't go to grade school. So the 9th one, you counted the 10th one. Or the 10th one, you counted as a 9th one. Or the 11th one, you counted the 10th one. Right? All these cases are Makudash. All 3 of these cases are Makudash. They're all included in the 10th. Asiri, the Torah says. The Gemara in other places, B'Sachas Bechoros, learns why all these things are considered to be, right? The ones that you call 10, the 11th one, the 9th one, you call 10. You call them 10. And the one that actually was 10, even though you called it 11, it doesn't matter. It was actually 10. So all these cases, even though it's hektish betos, they're all hektish. They're all considered meiser behema. You have to bring it as a korban in the base of Mikdash. Amar le Beis Hillel, lo hashevet kidsho. Beis Hillel responds to them, that's not a proof that hektish betos is hektish. It wasn't the fact that you took a stick, and stuck a red dot on it. Right? It's not that he did it by mistake. If he would, the 8th one, he would call the 10th one, and the 12th one, he would call the 10th one. It wouldn't be kadosh. El kosov shekidesh asiri hu kidesh chi ves ha'achad asar. It's a special Gzeras HaKasav, right? It's not because Hektish B'Toos is Hektish, because then otherwise, even the 15th or the 20th that he called the Asir should work, but that's not true. Torah didn't say that. Torah only says the 9th or the 11th could be the 10th. So therefore, it's a special din by Meiser Behema, whatever the reason is. We're going to explain it even Ben Sinan. What is the din of Meiser Behema? Why is it a unique din? According to Beis Hillel, it's a unique din. According to Beis Shammai, it's a regular din of Hektish, right? Even Beis Shammai obviously agrees that the 12th or the 8th couldn't be called the 10th, but maybe that's a technicality, but technically Hektish B'Toos is Hektish. Beis Hillel says no, Hektish is not Hektish. Meiser Behema is different, right? The 9th and 11th are special. Obviously, if it was Hektish B'Toos Hektish, it would have been even the 12th or the 8th. The Gemara says, Mani Masisin, who is our Mishnah, the beginning of our Mishnah, which says that he took a Naziris and he violated a Naziris, right? All he has to do, there's no penalty. Lo Rabbi Yossi, lo Rabbanan. It's not Rabbi Yossi or Rabbanan. The Sanya, we should know Avra Naziruso. We had this price in Mesachas Nadarim. He took a nether. His nether was a Naziris, and he violated his Nazir. He was drinking wine. And he was cocking though. Elam came Moda Behen Isra Kam Shenag Ben Heter. Right? We don't release him from his Naziris unless he pledges. Let's say for 60 days he was drinking wine. Right? Yeah, 100 day Naziris. 60 days he was drinking wine. First you penalize him. 60 days you have to go without drinking wine, and then you start counting 100 day Naziris again. Rabbi Yossi Omer Dayo Shloshim Yom. This is only after a penalty, even if you violate it for 60 days, a penalty is only 30 days. Irabbanan Kashin is just Mu'etas. Rabbi Yossi Kashin is just Meruba. Right? Our Mishnah is not like either of them. There seems there's no penalty for our Mishnah. Right? According to the Rabbanan, right? There's even a needed Ziras Mu'etas, right? Even a Ziras Mu'etas, he still has to take, right? According to the Rabbanan, if he's 60 days violated, so he has to count 60 days, right? And then start a new Naziris, right? So even if it was Naziris Mu'etas, a 30-day Naziris, he has to count another 30 days, then start a new 30-day Naziris. According to Rabbi Yossi, right? Dayoth Shel Shem Yom, meaning if it was in Naziris Mu'etas, it was a 30-day Naziris, and he violated for 30 days, just start counting over and do a new Naziris of 30 days. It's not that he penalizes 30 and then a new 30. It's just 30. So according to Rabbi Yossi, Kash Naziris Maruba. According to Rabbi Yossi, if it was Naziris of 30 days that he violated, that's not a question. But Naziris Maruba of 100 days, right? So then Rabbi Yossi says, then you have a penalty. Then you would have a penalty of 30 days, and you have to start another counting. And Rabbi Yossi is Moda, seemingly Moda. The fact that he says Dayu Shloshim Yom, if it was actually Nazir's only 30, the Stam Nazir's only 30 days, there would be no penalty. According to Rabbi Yossi, I'm just fixing a little bit what I said. According to Rabbi Yossi, there would be no penalty. It's only Masha from Yossi. There's only a penalty if it's a long Naziris. So according to Rabbi Yossi, it's a long Naziris. There's a penalty listed by a long Naziris of 30 days. So don't give us Tema Rabbi Yossi, I say Tema Rabbana. You can say Iba is Tema Rabbi Yossi, Iba is Tema Rabbana. You can say that our Mishnah follows both of them. Iba is Tema Rabbi Yossi, Kam Naziris Ruah, Kam Naziris Mu'atas. Right here, when he was saying Dayo Shloshim 30 days, that's talking about 100 day Naziris. So you have a penalty of 30 day Naziris, but a 30 day Naziris, a regular 30 day Naziris, there's no penalty, like our Mishnah says. Iba is Tema Rabbanan. You can say Rabbanan Lo Tema Mishash Nazar, Ella Kim Mishash Nazar. Our Mishnah doesn't say. Right, he starts counting from the time he took a Naziris, which is basically just finish the 30 days that you were do. Ela kimi shasha nazar, like the time he nazar, right? Meaning, for example, it's not exactly from the nazar, it's close to the time of the nazar, but he has to observe a penalty of whatever amount of days. Let's say it's 15 days he drank wine, so it's not exactly from the time he took the Naziris, because you need a penalty of 15 days. Or 60 days, however long he violated the Naziris for. And that the reason it says Kimisha, because sometimes it's very small. It's he only drank wine for 1 day. He only has to wait 1 day, a penalty of 1 day, and then continue. So just add up the letter Kuf. Not Kuf, Chaf. He went, the second case in the Mishnah, he went to the Chacham, their mater, his Naziris. I'm going to read the Beis Shammai, Nishmal, the Beis Hillel. Right? And the Machlokes continues about Hektish B'Toos. Shemir says, from Beis Shammai, we can learn from Beis Hillel. A lot of Beis Shammai, Hektish B'Toos, heavy Hektish. Right? They normally say Hektish B'Toos. It's a Hektish. Given the glowing meal still have Shopper Nazir, right? If the Chacham's matter is Nazirus, Teitze V'Terabei there. Again, the animal, he says, aside for his korban after the Nazirus, loses his Kedusha. It goes back to the flock. to graze with the flock. The Beis Hillel nami afagav da'amri tmura b'tos have you tmura, right? So according to Beis Hillel, who never say hektish b'tos is hektish. However, by tmura we admitted yesterday, if you have an animal which is tmura and by mistake you say zeh tachazeh, so both animals are kadosh. Even though hektish b'tos doesn't work here, it does work. Hani mili heichad isi liikar hektish. Aval heichad misaker ikar hektish isaker nami tmura. Let's say if the first animal, right, that you're makdish, you went to a chacham and you say that the hektish of the first animal is betos. I didn't realize I was makdish the first animal. So therefore, once you remove the kedusha from the first animal, the second animal's kedusha is only tied to the first animal. Therefore, if you matter the kedusha of the first animal, the tzmura also the kedusha would be removed. Amar mar yatem modim shilu kara l'shia siri. It's mar meiser. So I want to talk about this meiser behema. What exactly is the way of understanding this? Rav Nachman Amar Ta'uso v'lo kavanasa. Rav Nachman says the only time when we say the 9th and the 11th are kadosh, when you call it the 10th, is when he made a mistake. But if he, on purpose, so the 9th one is the 10th one, he knew exactly it was the 9th one, and he wanted to say the 10th one, that does not make it Meiser Behema. Rav Chisda Rav Huna Amri Ta'uso v'kol shekin v'naso. Kol shekin, certainly, if he was mechavein, the 9th he wanted, and the 11th he wanted to make it the 10th, Kol shekin, he learns a kol shekin. If by mistake it works, certainly if he does it on purpose. I'm really Rav Nachman. The Gemara is going to analyze his machlokas. Rav says Rav Nachman, only by mistake. The Amri Beis Shammai the Beis Hillel. Yet the modem shilu karl shia sir chi yolachar asar sir shlosh tam kudashin. Right? Beis Shammai says to the Beis Hillel, Veshtiko Beis Hillel. Beis Hillel's only retort was to say, what about the 8th and the 12th animal? Obviously, it's different than what you thought. Why didn't why didn't they say to him, according to you, Rav Nachman, and Meiser are fundamentally different. It only works, right, by with a toast, right? You can't compare Meiser. You can't make a proof from Meiser, right, where it's very different than regular hektish. Regular hektish, right, usually when I'm makdish something, I do it b'kavana. I say, this is hektish. This is a nadava to the base of Meiser, carbon ola, carbon shlamim. Right here, it only works. Meiser is the opposite of that. It only works by mistake. Right? Why didn't they answer that? Amar of Simi Barashi, Hainu Taima del Amri Lahun. The reason they didn't say that back then, Kavachomer, it's a Kavachomer. Meiser Shein Kodesh B'Kavana Kodesh B'Tos. Meiser, which is right, seemingly does not work according to Rav Nachman if you do it on purpose. It does work by mistake. Hektish Kodesh B'Kavana. Hektish, which for sure works when you're mechaben and say this is a common shlamim, it sure works. Lo kol shkein. Certainly it should work with toe, so they are connected. And then Rashi relents and he says, no, velohi the hektish b'daita demari tali. Really, you're right. There's no way to compare the two, because hektish depends on the kavana of the person. As a meiser happens to be a different halacha. According to Rav Nachman, at least it only works b'tos. So the Gemara at the end is moda. The Gemara admits, Rashi relents and admits that Meiser is fundamentally different than a regular hektish. Even though Meiser Behema is a type of hektish, right? Meiser Behema is a carbon. It fundamentally works very differently than regular hektish. Regular hektish, a makdish an animal at the end of my Nazir, or a makdish a carbon adava, shlam and old based on migdash, that works fundamentally different than Meiser. Now, even though this is according to Rav Nachman, principle Rav Rabba, Rav Huna, and Rav Chisda, who say that Meiser Behema works also b'kavana, so agree that Meiser Behema works very differently than regular hektish. We'll explain that difference in Eon with Ben Sion, a fundamental yesod, a fundamental foundation of the Hilchos hektish. The Mishnah says, Misha Nadar ben Nazir took a nether ben Naziros, v'halach lahavi es behemto, umatza shenignava. He pledged Naziros, and he planned on bringing, he had certain animals he would like to bring at the end of his Naziros. And he found out those animals were stolen. Im ad shelo nignava behemto nazar. If he goes back to the video and he sees that the animal hadn't been stolen when he took the Naziros, he was away from his animal. Right? Nazar, hareza Nazir. The Naziros is binding. Right? Even though the animal was stolen, because it was stolen afterwards. It wasn't a toast. It wasn't a mistake. The mission nignava, the top of Lam Bezim Bez, the mission nignava behemto nazar, Nazir. However, if he goes back to the video and sees that the animal was stolen before the Naziros, it's not a Nazir. Vizu toast ta nacham hamadak sha'alu Nazira min agola. This is the toast that Nacham Hamadai relied on when the Nazirim, apparently a lot of people in Klal Yisrael took Naziros upon themselves, right? in order that the base of Mikdash shouldn't be destroyed. Umatzu base of Mikdash charav. They found the base of Mikdash was destroyed. Amar lahem nachum amada yilaysim yodim base of Mikdash charav yisem nozrim. Right? They thought the base of Mikdash wasn't destroyed. So they said, if we would have known it wasn't destroyed, we wouldn't have taken the Nazir. Amar lahem lo. They said no. Ve'tira nachum amada. Nachum amada. They said not Nazirim. Ukshaba davar yisal chacham. When the chacham heard about this, Amru call nez shenazir ashal charav base of Mikdash nazir. When charav base of Mikdash nazir. Now, I don't know what this is talking about. People in Eretz Yisrael, I know the base of Mikdash was nichra for, well, I guess this is talking about the second base of Mikdash, not the first base of Mikdash. The second base of Mikdash. These Tanoim were all basically the Talmud and the Mishnayos, and really started towards the end of the second base of Mikdash, the era of the second base of Mikdash, right before it was destroyed. That's where the Tanoim, some Beis Hillel and Beit Shammai were like 100 years before. Rebbe was like 100 years after. So we're talking about the second base on the Mikdash. So they went outside of Eretz Yisrael. They didn't know it was Nechrav. They took a Nazirus on the assumption the base of Mikdash wasn't destroyed, and they were pledging to do a Nazirus, right, as sort of like a tefillah to Hashem. The base of Mikdash shouldn't be destroyed. Kol Nazir Ashlo Chara base on Mikdash. The Nazirus was before the base of Mikdash destroyed Nazir, because he wanted to take a Nazirus in order as like a tefillah, as like a nadava to Hashem, that the base of Mikdash shouldn't be destroyed. If we go back and what year did you take a Nazirus? Oh, it was in the year 71 AD after the base was destroyed. Ain't no Nazir. It's not a Nazir because it was a Nazirus Betos. And the Gemara says, I'm a Rabbah. Rabbah says, Shtafu Rabbanon Lezer ve'ukmim b'shitasayu. The Rabbanon convinced Rabbi Lezer and had Rabbi Lezer agree to them about what? The Snan, we learned in Masach Zandar and Poskim and Nolad. Divrei Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer has a unique shita that he can use Nolad, right? We said a neder, you make a neder, and then something else happens. For example, right, someone says, a father-in-law says, I'm never going to let this daughter, I'm taking a neder, that this person, this son-in-law, this future son-in-law, his daughter wants to marry someone, should never get any benefit from his possessions. And then his daughter marries him, and he ends up turning into a rabbi, like Rabbi Akiva. He turned into a rabbi, right? So that's sort of nolad, right? Tosfos explains in Ksuvos maybe why it's not nolad. But Rabbi Lezer says, right, he becomes a sofer, he becomes a scribe, he becomes a Talmud Chacham. And he wasn't in yeshiva. Tosfos says he was in yeshiva. You're going to yeshiva, you're going to be a Talmud Chacham. But he wasn't in yeshiva, he was working. So it's considered nolad. Rabbi Lezer says, we could use nolad, even though the grounds that I'm using to matir the neder happened after the neder. You could use a chum motion. The chum say no. It has to, the grounds to matir neder had to be already present at the time of the neder. And apparently, our Gemara is here saying that the chum had Rabbi Lezer agree to them. Amar Rabba. Rabba says Avagav Amar Rabbana in poskim benolad. Aval poskim b'tnai nolad. And that's really what the reason the Gemara brings us over here is that's what our Mishnah is saying, right? It depends if they became Nazirim, the base of Mikdash was destroyed at the time of their Nazirus. Because even though they made their Nazirus contingent upon the base of Mikdash being around, if they took the Nazirus before the base of Mikdash was destroyed, the Nazirus is binding. So the Gemara says, you don't use Nolad, Poskim, but T'nai Nolad. You could use something which is related to Nolad, a stipulation of Nolad. We'll see what the second, what does this mean? What is that case? Amri Lahun, Ilu Ata Asa Inish, Amar Lachun, the Char base of Mikdash, we have an Adrison, right? Even though they took the Nazirus before the base of Mikdash was destroyed, but they say to the person, if a person would come to you when you're taking Nazirus and told you the base of Mikdash is destroyed, would you take the Nazirus? And he says no. So that is like the Gemara says in Masechtas Nedarim, that you can matir a neder based on the fact that people take the Nedarim and Nazirus when they're very angry. And if you have people to pacify you, right, it shows that the anger caused your Nazirus. Right, and if you had people to pacify you and say the base of Mikdash already is destroyed, you would never have taken the neder. So that's not using. It's not your neder is not based on the presence of the base of Mikdash, not the presence of the base of Mikdash. It's based on your anger, and therefore, if you show that someone would have pacified you at that time, so therefore your anger is grounds for bima to the neder. Amar of Yosef, he have a hasam. Yosef says, if I was there. Right? If I was there when Nacham Amadai and the Rabbanan in our Mishnah, I would have said that it doesn't matter whether they took a Naziris after the Beis Hamikdash, before the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. Since the Torah alludes to it, it says the word Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, Heichal Hashem, corresponding to the three Beis Hamikdash, the first two that were destroyed, and the third one. The fact that we a third one shows the second one is going to be destroyed. So therefore, even though it wasn't destroyed at that point, but they knew with the pasuk they knew it was going to be destroyed. So therefore, at the time, even though it wasn't destroyed, but they took an Naziris on the presumption that was around, but they knew from the psukim it was going to be destroyed. So therefore, it's like it wasn't there. So it should never be a binding Naziris. So the Gemara says, maybe even though they knew it will be destroyed, they didn't know when it would be destroyed. So therefore, they planned to take the Naziris before it was destroyed, in order to prevent it or prolong the Beis Hamikdash. It shouldn't be destroyed until a later date. Amar Abaye, people didn't know when it's going to be destroyed. Shvuyim shivim nechtach alamchich v'al kachach. It says 7 periods of 70, which equals 7 times 70 is 490 years. 490 years after the destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. They knew exactly when it was going to happen. So the Gemara says, yes, they knew it was going to happen 490 years later, but which day it was going to be? So therefore, when they took the Nazirus, maybe they planned on it still being around. They wanted to prolong it till the end of the year, and therefore their Nazirus is binding if it happened before the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed. That's the conclusion of today's share. Stay tuned. I'm leaving the Mishnah for tomorrow because it's a very small daf, so at least I'll have something to talk about tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's share. Stay tuned. I want to talk today in Enos Ben Sion about Meiser Behema, where the Mishnah and the Gemara really distinguish the Meiser Behema and regular Hekdesh. We'll talk about that Enos Ben Sion coming up next.